Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Burnt Pancakes podcast. I'm your host, Katie Fensky, reminding moms that everyone burns their first pancake. Now, today's episode is one that's going to hit you right in the heart in the best way. I'm talking with Nikki McIntosh. She is the author of Rare Mamas Empowering Strategies for Navigating Your Child's Rare Disease. After her youngest son, Miles, was diagnosed with a rare neuromuscular disease called spinal muscular atrophy, Nikki's entire world changed. She left her 18-year marketing career and stepped into a completely new role, full-time caregiver, advocate, and the founder of the Rare Mamas community. In her new book, Nikki offers practical tools and powerful hope for moms who are navigating the rare disease world. But honestly, her message applies to every mom who's ever felt overwhelmed, exhausted, and unseen. We talk about finding strength when life doesn't go as planned, caring for yourself when your tank is empty, and how to find connection in the middle of what is hard. This is raw and it's real and it's full of heart. So let's get into this conversation with Nikki McIntosh. Nikki, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, I want to just jump right in and hear your story. So, your journey began with your son Miles when he was diagnosed with that rare disease. Can you kind of just take us back and tell us that story?
Yes. So, my husband and I have two boys, and my second son was born seemingly healthy and happy. And we started noticing around 18, excuse me, maybe around less than a year that he wasn't bearing weight on his legs to pull to stand and kind of
Mhm.
take those initial steps. And we knew the precursors to walking and what the milestones were. We had the older son. And so we started on the road of testing, and it took 6 months to get to a diagnosis. And that diagnosis led to a severe rare disease diagnosis, progressive disease, so degenerative over time causes muscle weakness and robs people of their ability to walk, eat, even breathe. At the time, it was the
Oh,
leading cause of genetic death in infants. So it was excruciating. Our world basically was flipped upside down in an instant. It kind of went, I would say, dark for a bit
mhm.
there. We were in a complete fog. Um, but there was no time to process feelings or any of that because we had to get busy getting everything in place for our son. And so that was our entry into the world of rare disease, medical parenting, caregiving, all of it.
Oh my goodness. How old was your older son when this happened?
Yes, my older son was just about 2 years older
Oh
than my
gosh.
younger son, so they're about 2 years apart. So he was a toddler. So I had what did I have? Like a,
Hands
almost
full.
4 year old and almost, yeah,
Oh.
exactly. Exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was and that was so hard. He was one of my biggest concerns too. My other son is how am I going to give him a childhood at the same time of
Yes.
taking care of a child with such high needs. So
Right.
yeah, there was a fear for my son with a disease. I was worried for my son that wasn't affected by a disease, but just for being, being able to give him what he needs.
The idea of normal just like went out the window after that.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you said that most kids who have this, like the infancy death rate is really high. Were people surprised that he was the age he was?
Yeah, so there's different levels of severity, and some patients are able the symptoms show right away. The most severe are diagnosed at babies because they basically don't have the ability to move their limbs and things of that nature. So they're diagnosed right away. My son, then there's a higher level of capability where the disease onset is later after somebody is maybe in their teens or even an
Oh,
adult and they can
wow.
lose their abilities. So my son was somewhere in between,
Okay.
yeah, the levels of severity, which is typical of children being able to sit and maybe even crawl, but not able to walk. So that's kind of what the children in that level of severity kind of look
Okay.
like. Yeah.
What did the doctors like prognosis wise? What did they say? Like he will be able to do this, he won't be able to do this? Like what were they
Yeah. There
setting you
was
up for?
there was because there's such different levels of severity and because it kind of unfolds differently for each patient, it was hard for them to predict what his future would look like. But of course, I was looking it up and I was looking at the
Hmm.
statistics and, the prognosis was very grim. We didn't know if we would,
Mm,
it changed life expectancy for certain, and we didn't know exactly what that meant or when. So
right.
that's why it was so terrifying.
Right. And to go like almost a year of I have a normal child and then
Yeah.
wait, put on the brakes. What's happening?
Right. And expecting something else, right? We
Hmm.
was expecting there's something. We knew there was something going on and we were
Yeah.
really desperate to find that answer, but we didn't know the answer was going to be something so severe and something that we had never heard of. And that was
Right.
actually genetic and no one in our family had ever had it before. So it was such just we were shell shocked by it.
Right. Oh. Now, at the time, you ended up leaving your 18-year-long career in marketing. What was that like? What led you to that decision and how was that?
Yeah, that was a big decision because I loved my work. I loved what I did. I was passionate about it. And, but I quickly was able to see that I was going to have a hard time upholding my career and chasing down everything I needed for my son.
Mm,
His care came with a whole team of specialists, physical therapy, all types of therapy. And also we quickly got busy exploring the research that was happening and for possible treatments. There was no treatment, there was no cure at the time. There are now treatments. And my son
wow.
was actually involved in a clinical trial for that became the first ever treatment for his disease.
Wow.
But at the time, there was nothing. So, but we were looking. And so I quickly saw I'm not going to be able to uphold my career and
Hmm.
chase down every lead for my son, and he is my priority. And so I made that hard decision. It was hard also financially to go to,
Hmm.
one, two
Yeah.
breadwinners to one. So there was a lot to take in an account, but I was just so desperate to save my child at that point.
Mm. What year was he diagnosed? When was it?
He was diagnosed in 2013, and I
2013.
left, yeah, later, maybe, I don't know how many months later, but soon thereafter I left.
Hmm.
And that came with so many things too, too, just that loss of identity, an identity I once have, moving into this other identity.
Yes.
There was a lot at play.
Right. Like I feel that a little bit because I left my teaching career after 17 years. Just I wanted to be a mom. I didn't want that coming in the way, but it is different when people ask you, "Oh, what do you do?" And before I could just say, "Oh, I'm a teacher."
Right,
One word answer, moving on.
right,
And now it's like, well, I was a teacher and then I was like it's
right.
harder to explain.
I went through that same thing. It was like I didn't want to lose that piece of me.
Right.
That was a big part of my life and who I was and my identity and what I worked so hard for. So it felt weird to
Hmm.
not have that piece to talk about. I found myself doing the same thing, explaining, well, I left my career behind, to do this. And just
Hmm.
because I guess I just didn't want to lose that piece of who I was.
Right. Right. And the sense of like I'm earning my own money.
Right.
I missed that part
Yes,
too.
for certain.
Yes. Now I can
And
rely on someone else. Hmm.
right. And I also think there was also a sense of, like you were 17 years into your career. I was 18 years into my career. I built up to a place where I felt capable and I felt
Yes.
confident
I
at it.
proved
And now,
myself. Hmm.
right. And now I'm thrown into now being at a place where I know nothing and I'm starting at square one. So I'm a beginner again and I have to learn it all. It was a huge
Wow.
learning curve. So there's something about that too, that piece of it.
Hmm. Yeah. What was the name of his disease?
It's called spinal muscular atrophy. We call it SMA, the acronyms for short.
What is the how many people get it? Like what
Yes. So,
how rare is
yeah,
it?
what's one in 10,000, and which actually is quite large for a rare disease. Actually, it's one of
Hmm.
the larger rare diseases. Any disease that's under 200,000 affected by 200,000 people affected is considered rare. But there
Okay.
are some rare diseases that affect maybe like 100 people worldwide. So it's a rare disease, and what makes it rare is that actually 1 in 50 people are carriers.
I
And what
see.
makes it rare, so that's not rare, right? But what makes
Yeah.
it rare is it two carriers coming together,
Okay.
and that's how the disease is passed on. And so that part makes it rare, two carriers, and it's usually two carriers that don't know they're carriers. That's usually
Hmm.
how it
Yeah.
happens. Yeah.
Wouldn't even know. Um, well, I just thought of a question when you were saying that. Now I forget what I was going to say. Um, oh, so because it's so rare, but not completely uncommon, were there doctors that had already worked with patients like this, or were you able to find other families locally or somewhere that you could connect with?
Yes, thanks. That's a great question because it was such a big part of our journey. When
Mm,
we initially were looking, our pediatrician at the time did not know anything, or did not, they
right.
basically dismissed our concerns that we were quite a while saying, I think something's going on.
Oh, wow.
We were getting
So you had to
dismissed.
keep pushing.
We had to keep pushing. And so we pushed to go and see a neurologist because we just
Mm-hmm.
felt there's something and we're not going to stop
Trust your
looking. Yeah,
instinct, right?
exactly. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That mama's in sync. So then when we went to see a specialist, a really talented specialist, she knew, she suspected, I should say, from
Mm-hmm.
the start of seeing him. And within the first 20 minutes of that first initial appointment, she said, you were right to bring him. Absolutely. There's something going on. We're going to start down the path of testing and we're going to figure it
Mm-hmm.
out. And so we found that right partner. And because she was so seasoned and so versed, she had a suspicion as to what she thought it was. She did suspect SMA from the start, but she started by ruling out some of the more common diseases and more common diagnoses. And so that's why it took 6 months of testing to kind of get that diagnosis. And the best part of what she did is after we got that diagnosis, she plugged us into the leading patient advocacy organization for patients that have SMA, which is
Oh,
called
wow.
Cure SMA. And this was an organization that was started actually by parents, a group of parents who
Mm-hmm.
wanted to help their kids years ago. And now it's a really robust advocacy organization. They gave us a real sense of community. And now we were connected with other parents who have been on this journey, and they were such a lifeline of support. And I still call them to this day saying,
Mm-hmm.
how did you handle this at school? And how do you do this? And
Right.
when it's time for my son to go to high school and college, I'll be calling them for tips. So
Mm-hmm.
that community was a real powerful piece for us. And that's kind of how we found our footing.
Right. To help you feel like you're not alone. Like otherwise you're just
Exactly.
swimming and like can't find anything.
Yes.
With his disease, so you said having him ready for high school and stuff, what type of setbacks or handicaps did he have because of this?
Yeah, so he navigates life from a wheelchair because of
Okay.
the muscle weakness. He has, it's predominantly in his trunk, although his arm strength is not the same as a typical child his age either. And so he navigates life from a wheelchair and he always has. So he's very used to it. But
Hmm.
we always have to figure that out, right? We have to figure out how to do things differently and how to work
Yeah.
around. And, um, like I said, he was involved in a trial that went on to become the first ever treatment for his disease. So fortunately, it has stopped the progression of the disease, which is absolutely
Wow.
everything. It's
That's
amazing.
incredible.
Yes. And then it has also allowed him to strengthen. And so now he is able to do things like he's playing wheelchair tennis,
Wow.
something we never thought he'd
Never
be.
thought you'd do.
Yeah, yeah. So he's finding his way. He's
Hmm.
definitely finding his way, but we just are always having to figure it out and get creative and, finding a way around, finding a new way to do things. And so um, we're learning as we go.
Right.
That's for
Like the
sure.
little things that I take for granted, like everyone get in the car. Like your get in the car is like you probably have to have a special car that fits a
We do.
wheelchair.
We
And,
do.
like
Yep.
it's just
We,
a different life. Like you have to
yeah.
adjust your life.
Yeah.
And
We
that's
built
where I
the
think
world.
having that community really helps because then it's like, oh, we get, yes, let's
Yeah,
go find a restaurant that has a wheelchair ramp that's easy to
exactly.
get to, easy to use. Yeah.
Yes, that's it. The community helped us with all the tips and things we would need to
Mm-hmm.
know, and the type of equipment we would need. And we've kind of built our world that way where, our home is we moved to a single story and we got the accessible vehicle and we have,
Mm-hmm.
the bathroom set up to roll in shower and all the things. And so um, we've kind of built what we need, but we're always faced when we go out in community of, with barriers and roadblocks and things
Mm-hmm.
like that nature. And so we're always having to figure it out, or we're calling ahead to ask if there's a ramp, or to, looking
Right.
online to see what the setup is. We're always doing our homework to try and make it easier if
Right.
it can
So it
be.
has essentially become a full-time job. Like you just
It
replaced your
really
marketing
is.
career with now I'm full-time caregiver and doing
Yes,
this.
it is
Yeah.
true. It is true.
So what made you start the Rare Mamas community and essentially write your book?
Um, I think, just wanting what we all want as moms, for when we're new moms, We crave that sense of community, somebody else who's been through it. We need that, right? Because as
Hmm.
I said, we start as beginners and we have to learn all of the things that we need to know. And so when I saw that, hey, we don't have that for rare disease. And learning that a lot of rare diseases, they're so rare that they don't have that patient organization that I was talking about, where I found my
Hmm.
community, 50% of rare diseases don't have that.
Wow.
So those parents are really on their own. And we look around in our communities, in our churches, in our neighborhoods, and where we're going, and we might not see other people living that same type of life. And then that makes us feel alone and isolated. So I wanted to build that community so rare moms knew they're not alone. There's actually millions of us. There's like 30
Hmm.
million in the US alone navigating this life. So, and I also know that moms are the best and parents are the best sources of information, right? When we
Hmm.
share, we share how to do these little daily tips of daily living. Try this will help, and try this piece of gear, it'll help. And so I wanted that for rare moms. And so that's why I started the community. And that's why I wrote the book, just basically to serve this audience, this very deserving audience, and share all the learnings I've learned along the way. It's been a decade now. So I wanted to share to make it easier for that next mom.
Right. And kind of putting yourself in that like beginning stage, like what would I have wanted when I was
Yes,
first finding out? Kind of like a support group. Yeah.
that's it.
Um,
That's it.
you were saying that your book includes humor and just like real talk stories. Why is it important to include that side of motherhood in such an emotional, difficult subject?
Yes. Well, real talk is everything, right? I mean, without that, how do we get anywhere?
How do we survive,
How
right?
do we survive? We need it. And it's those truths that we're all living. We need to hear them. We need to hear the other person's going through that too. That gives that sense, okay, I'm not alone in this, and it's okay to feel this way or to do it this way or what have you. So we need that real talk. And that sisterly, give it to me straight kind of thing. I'm all
Hmm.
about that. Um, and then, on top of that, humor it can be such an amazing tool for coping, even with something so serious. And I got to tell you, I've had to fight really hard to keep my sense of humor because there was times I thought I might lose it during this, but I knew it was important. And I like that part of me. I like that sarcastic, humorous part of me. And I kind of thought, I'm not losing that too. This disease is already stealing too much. It doesn't get to take that away too. So
Right.
I felt like, including humor was a way for us to cope and to deal with something so heavy. I wanted the mom that was reading the book to, she's reading a lot of really difficult information and she's, dealing with difficult emotions. I wanted to pepper some humor in there too to give her a laugh
Right.
because we need it.
Right. Escape from reality a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, as a caregiver, burnout can be so real, like such a hard thing. And I imagine even more so for rare moms with children with rare diseases. What are some of your favorite tips um, for how to deal with burnout?
Yes. I will say a couple things. One is we need to get really strategic and really methodical about taking care of ourselves. We do that for our kids, right? We schedule the appointments for them. We, schedule the activities that are good for them or what have you. We're really strategic and methodical about it, but we're not so with ourselves. And we need to be because it's not going to happen any other way, right? So we need to get those calendars out and really schedule it in. And prioritize it. And oftentimes it doesn't have to be some big luxurious thing. It's like take your vitamins. I mean, it can be as simple as that. Do you know what I mean? I
Yes.
mean, that is like little daily things that help uphold our well-being.
Hmm.
So I think we, not thinking of it some, big, huge, unattainable things, but just those little things on a daily basis that help us get outside for some sunshine, have a
Hmm.
healthy lunch or whatever it may be. Those little things, they make a big difference. And so get really strategic with making sure those are like on our calendar and scheduled in. And I'll say the second thing, I think burnout comes when we push through too many big things in a row. And so what I've learned is that in the world of, rare disease and caregiving, medical parenting, it's like you can't really take time off. Like everything is
Hmm.
important and everything is big, but I think we can be a little smart about when we can, the way we schedule things. Meaning, if you have something big where you're going to exert a lot of energy, maybe it's in my world, maybe it's a medical appointment, In somebody else's world, maybe it's a big work presentation or a trip, right? Or whatever, what have you. Maybe it's a big meeting at school, what have you. After, know that that is going to be a day where you are exerting so much energy emotionally, mentally, physically, and that after that you're going to need to recover from that experience before the next one. So really look at that calendar and go, the next day after that, I'm not going to schedule some other
Mhm.
big thing, right? I'm going to schedule some downtime, or that evening it's going to be blocked out for some recuperation. I think the burnout comes when we have too many things like that in a row and we are not taking that time to rebuild and
Mhm.
refuel. So we just have to be really smart about looking at that ahead of time and saying, okay, after this, I'm going to need that little time to refuel. Once we refuel, we're able to rise again and do what we need to do.
Mhm.
Um, but just that time to those rhythms of,
Mhm.
rising and recovering. We need to build those in.
Yeah. You mentioned care or like having to leave. What did you do in terms of like babysitters and stuff? Because he probably your son needed special care and you can't just like hire anyone. Was it harder to leave him with people and find care that you trusted? And
Yes, certainly. We're fortunate. We have a lot of family who lives close by and who has really supported us, and we were able to kind of show them, yeah, what he needed. So that's good. But yes, parents like me, sometimes our kids need specialized training, and so you
Mhm.
can't just leave them with anybody. And so it takes a while to find that right person, and so that makes it trickier. And that's oftentimes why a lot of parents don't get a break because
Right.
they can't find somebody they feel is
Hmm.
reliable to do the task. It has a skill set able to take care of their kid. And so sometimes we have to find other ways of getting a break by having people help us with other things. Maybe it's not the care for our kid, but maybe it's something else that can help us.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. I had a hard time just finding someone other than family to watch my kids.
Yes.
And my kids were, they could run around. I can't imagine if you had to like get specialized help, like it'd be so
Yes.
much harder.
It is. It's really hard, and it's definitely a pain point for all the people in this world, and
Hmm.
because it's hard to leave our kids, but at the same time, I was told, try and do that. Have your
For
child
you.
get used
Hmm.
to somebody else early on, so it's not so strange later on. You want to build,
Right.
you want them to get comfortable with that, so that you can get a break eventually.
Right. Because
Yeah.
then the thought of like, oh, I can't leave them, I can't leave them, then you're never leaving them. You're
Yeah.
always with them. And
Yeah.
that takes a lot.
And it's so
Oof.
important that we get those breaks. We need them.
Hmm.
We desperately need
Absolutely.
them.
Absolutely. If you could speak to a mom who had just received a rare disease diagnosis, what would you tell her?
Oh, I would tell her that she is going to become capable. At the beginning, she's going to feel like there's so much to learn.
Mm.
It's so overwhelming. How will she ever rise to this challenge? But I think, moms can do some really remarkable things because we're fueled by that deep love for our child, and that's powerful. That's what helps us do anything. We learn complex math when our kids that comes home with complex math homework, right? We learn everything there is to learn about lacrosse when our kid says they want to join the lacrosse team.
So true.
And right. And so just like that, we're going to rise to the challenge. And so I would say
Mhm.
to that mom, um, that she's going to become capable. She may not feel that way now, and to plug into community because it really is everything. And there's a whole willing group of us who are willing to hold her hand or show her the way.
Mm.
So, she's capable, and we're here, community, to,
Love
to show her
that.
the way.
Okay, so on that note, where can we find your book and how can moms connect with you?
Thank you so much. Yes. Everything is at raremamas.com. And you can go to raremamas.com/book for information about the book. The book is available anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, Apple Books, all the places you can find it. And all my info is there also. I'm on Instagram at rare_mamas and reach out. I'd love to connect.
Awesome. Well, I so appreciate you sharing your story with us today and just everything you're doing for motherhood in general.
Thank you, Katie, and thanks for what you're doing to support moms. I'm truly grateful.
I just loved that conversation with Nikki. She's the kind of mom who reminds you that even when life takes a turn you never expect, you can still show up with courage, humor, and heart. If you want to connect with Nikki, go grab her book, Rare Mamas, Empowering Strategies for Navigating Your Child's Rare Disease. And I'll make sure to link that in the show notes. And if you know a mom who is walking through something like this, whether it's a rare disease or just one of those hard seasons, make sure to share this episode with them. Motherhood is not meant to be done alone, and sometimes the best gift we can give another mom is just reminding them that she's not the only one out there. Thank you for listening, and I can't wait to have you join me for the next Momversation. But until next week, let me remind you that everyone burns their first pancake, so just keep flipping.